show you how you can install Linux on your old phone. So I have this phone right here, which is the Samsung Galaxy A51, and I'm going to install Linux on it. And this is not like a virtual machine or any sort of emulation. This is a pure like Linux operating system running directly on the device hardware, right? And this is all thanks to this amazing project which is postmarketOS. So basically, this project is like a bunch of hackers who decided to run Linux on pretty much anything they can, and they like collectively share their resources and their methodologies and their like binaries and these kind of steps. So this will make it a ton easier for us to like follow their steps and their uh, results and to achieve it, right? So right here, I am uh, opening the website wiki.postmarketos.org, right? And when you open it, I want you to look up for your phone, right? So in this case, I will search for Samsung Galaxy A51. And as you can see here, I have, or there is a page for my phone. So this means that there are some people who also had this phone and they like tried to run Linux on the phone. They might have faced a couple of challenges, but they managed to solve it, and they like uploaded their patches and their fixes, right? So this will make it a lot easier because this means that we don't need to do all of like the hard work. It has already been done, and we just need to like download it and use it, right? However, if your phone is not like listed here, this means that it's not supported in any way, and that's because uh, like not all phones are like have pages on the wiki. But this doesn't mean that you cannot install Linux on it. You still can do it, but you would have to do all of the steps manually. You would have to figure out all of the things and solve like the issues that you will face, right? So I guess I'm lucky because there is an entry already for my phone, right? So once you open your like the page for your mobile phone, you will like see a lot of details, and these details are very important. All right. So basically, this tells you how you can like enter into recovery or how you can install Linux, right? So here is how you enter into the recovery, and here is the installation steps, which we will be covering in this video. Also, you can see what is working and what is not working. So the touch screen is working, which is a nice thing. Display is also working. Frame buffer, it works, but it needs like some fixes, which is already done. Charging and battery status is working. Volume, all right. So volume is tested on XFCE, and if you don't know what is this, so basically XFCE is like a user interface or a desktop environment, right? So they have tested the volume on this specific user interface, which means that if you use this user interface, there is a high chance that volume will work for you. If you use another interface, it might work or it might not work, right? Screen brightness is also partially working, and finally the Wi-Fi is also partially working, right? And here is a couple of notes, all right? So, for example, USB networking, like in this case, I believe there was an issue, but maybe they managed to like solve it, or they will tell you how you can solve the issue, right? In the notes. So, for example, for Wi-Fi, it says that these probes are required, but you don't need to do anything about it because it's already like the fix is already like incorporated into the firmware that we are going to install, right? So because some people have already done the work and fixed the bugs, they uploaded their patches, and a working firmware is already available for anyone who has this phone to download and like customize and then use it directly, right? Also, here is another note for the frame buffer. But as I said, you don't need to like you don't need to pay like too much attention to these details, because most of the time they are already like incorporated into the firmware itself, right? But it's a good thing to read them. Okay. Also, you will find links for like the things that were mentioned here. For example, um, like this was the initial merge request for this phone, like for support of this phone, and you will find other links for other details. But on the right hand side, you will find like an information on the device itself. So manufacturer is Samsung, the name is A51, the code name is Samsung-A51. These kind of information, right? Because actually postmarketOS is not meant for mobile phones only. Like there are other types of devices that they also try to run Linux on, like routers, for example. So this is also an interesting aspect of the project. You will find hardware details here. So in this case, my phone uses the Exynos chipset, which is correct. And the GPU in this case is Mali G7 II. This is the resolution, and it's an AMOLED screen, which is a nice thing to have because, as you can see, when we install Linux, there isn't uh, like a, it's not like how Android manages to turn off and turn on the screen and the touch, right? So having an AMOLED screen means that if the screen is black, it means it's not using uh, too much power, right? And all right, so there is no pre-built images for this phone, and this is an interesting part, right? So the category is testing, and there is no pre-built images. What does this mean? So if you go to Google and search for postmarketOS, and you can visit this one. So this is not the wiki site, this is like the homepage, all right? If you go to the install tab, you can find here pre-built images, all right? So depending on your phone, you might even find a pre-built image for your phone that is ready like to just install it. You don't need to do any of the configuration. However, my phone doesn't have this kind of support, so we need to do some work, right? We need to like run some commands and install some stuff. Uh, However, like the hardest part is already done. Okay, and this is also an interesting and important section in uh, like the wiki, which tells you what is supported and what is not supported, right? So, for example, USB networking works, right? And like internal storage, SD card, or in this case, SD card is like it's empty, right? This could mean that it wasn't tested before, like no one tested it, or it's not supported in this case, right? So the battery screen, touch screen, the all works, the Wi-Fi works. However, for example, audio is not tested, or it's not uh, like the necessary packages or patches are not included into the firmware. So there is a high chance that it wouldn't work. 3D acceleration, which is an important part, is also not uh, available for my phone. And why is it an interesting part? Because some programs and some user interfaces require 3D acceleration to work, right? Not having 3D acceleration is equivalent to not having a GPU, like something like this. So you can't really run like heavy GPU intensive workloads. You cannot like you can't watch videos that use higher resolutions and frame rates and these kind of issues, right? And for example, the sensors are not supported also in this firmware, right? So now that we know like this information, let's see how we can install Linux on this device. As you can see, there are already like two owners of this device who contributed to this page, right? And they even uploaded like an image for like a proof that it works. And in this case, this image uses the XFCE4 um, user interface. And I guess that's it. Let's now jump into the details. So the installation steps, it tells you to use postmarketOS Bootstrap to build your own installation image. The device configuration, which is these like details, will be used to like configure the firmware and to build the firmware for our device, which also contains blobs for Wi-Fi, right? So this issue right here is already solved and is it's like it once you use the bootstrap, it will be incorporated into the firmware automatically, right? However, it also tells you that due to some limitations, you will use the user data partition for the root partition. So depending on your device, you can have like a certain configuration for like the partitions on the device. And this is something that maybe you will like see more information about it later in the video. But what this means is that we are going to install postmarketOS on the data partition rather than on like a root partition or a system partition, right? So to do this, you simply need to add this part right here into your install command, and we will see how we can do this, right? Also, it tells you that uh, this thing right here is untested, is not tested, which means that it might not work for you or it might cause issues, but it could also work pretty fine. All right, and this is the open source equivalent to Odin, if you know what Odin is, right? But if you don't know what Odin is, you probably like don't need to use this. And in this video, we are going to use the recovery mode or the recovery method to install postmarketOS. So we don't need to use Odin or we don't need to use this project as well. So it tells you to use an installation from recovery mode in state, right? And this is exactly what we are going to do. Also, right here, there is like a note which tells you for this device, ADB side loading through TWRP may cause the installation process to hang. So in this case, it advises you to install postmarketOS using the GUI install button, which we are going to do also. So here is the thing: there are a lot of ways to install like firmware on your device. For example, like ADB side loading and using like an SD card with TWRP recovery. So these notes suggest like a specific way to install postmarketOS, which is used by these people, which is guaranteed to work, right? And this is what we are going to use. All right, so great. Now we know like some information about the installation process. How should we proceed? First of all, we need to like understand what is this and how to use it, right? So this is the first thing that I'm going to do. So I just closed everything and I'm going to open this link right here, right? So what is a PM bootstrap or post-market bootstrap? This is like a central CLI application that is used to like build and package firmware for different devices. and you can use it to like incorporate fixes and patches from other people, and they have a repository like uh, full of like packages and software and things that you might need for your own firmware, right? So this tool right here is going to make your life a lot easier, right? So it tells you to read the installation article first, since you uh, might not need to install depending on your method. But in this case, we need to install it, all right? And if you actually open the installation guide, there is like two methods. The first is to use a pre-built image, and the second is to use the post-market bootstrap. And as I said, if your phone already has a pre-built image, like you would probably uh, like install the pre-built image directly, right? So you don't need to follow any of the steps in this video. You might as well like jump to the last step where we like flash or install the generated image that we will make using this tool through the recovery, right? However, my phone doesn't have a pre-built image, so we are going to use PM Bootstrap, right? So to install PM Bootstrap, there are like a couple of different ways. The first one is through your package manager. So here is the thing. In this video, we will be using Linux, right? And most of like the documentation right here assumes you are using Linux. If you are not using Linux, uh, you can see this link right here, other operating systems, and it should tell you what to do in this case. So if you are on Windows, you can use WSL, Windows Subsystem for Linux. And I believe if you are on Mac OS, uh, maybe you can follow pretty much most of the steps, because macOS is like quite similar to Linux. However, it's like usually better to follow the steps of the documentation in the intended uh, operating system, right? So right here I have right I have Fedora, right? Fedora Linux. So I can use these steps. So for example, I can do DNF install VM bootstrap. However, I'm not going to do this. Why? Because if you actually like move to this section, which tells you how to install VM bootstrap from Git or using Git, right? I believe this is better. Why? Because the GitHub repository is like the latest stable version. So sometimes packaging packaging the like projects takes times, and like having it into the distro repositories sometimes it takes time. So if you like installed post market bootstrap using these methods, you might get an outdated version, right? So and this is exactly what they are saying here, right? So we are going to use this method instead, which downloads and installs postmarketOS from the GitHub or the GitLab uh, repository directly, right? So how would we do this? First of all, we need a terminal, right? So we have a terminal right here, and we can, or in this case, before I download or do anything, I will move into the downloads folder. Right, so I'm in the downloads folder. We need to follow these steps right here. So we need to clone this repository, right? So how we can do this? We can git clone and we paste the link of the repo. And this would install postmarket bootstrap. I've already done this step. And as you can see here, all right, so I have the folder for the repo right here. So if I cd into this folder. All right. So here is the project, right? Now I have, all right. So I have already done this step. We need to do this step. So this step creates like the local binary directory if it wasn't created before. And in this case, you can like simply copy and run it. I've already created it before, so nothing really happened. The second step is to use this command. So what does this command do? This command makes like a link, or you can say like a shortcut, right, for this script right here into the local binary directory. So why is this? Why are we doing this step? This is so that we can like use the pmbootstrap like as any normal application, right? So whatever is in your binary directory is going to be available for you to use as an application directly in the terminal without having to type like the path to the application, right? So I can do this and it would work, right? Even if I'm in a completely different directory. So for example, I'm in the downloads and there is no pmbootstrap to buy here, right? But I can still do this command because we have like added the link for the Python file into our local binary directory, right? There is also a note that like tells you to do this step if you received this error, right? So if you try to run the help message, or if you try to run this command and it gave you this error, just run this command or like to resolve this error. All right. All right, great. So now we have pmbootstrap installed, and this is our first important step, right? So now let's move into this section, which explains how to use pmbootstrap. So the first thing that you will need to do is to run the init command in pmbootstrap, right? So how can we do this? Let me clear the screen. Pmbootstrap init, and that's it. That's literally it. And it would ask you a couple of questions, right, in order to determine the configuration for your firmware or the image that you are going to build. So we need to answer these questions. However, I just want to point out an important thing. These values right here, which are in the square brackets, these are kind of like the default values. However, these are not the actual default values. So these are the values that I have chose before. So the nice thing about the bootstrap command is that it remembers your previous choices. So you don't need to like type them every time you use the tool, right? So the first time you run it, you will see like the default values, or you will see different values from the ones I have here. But once you fill in these values, and if you ever run the command again, you will find these values already populated in the default ones, right? So in this case, what is like the working directory that pmbootstrap should use to download and build and configure all of the stuff necessary for our image? I used this directory before, right? So I might as well use it again. All right, and now it asks you about the release channel. Before I tell you what is this, I would like to point out that all of the questions right here are already explained, right? So, for example, like the work path that we have already defined right here, it tells you what is this and why it's needed and this kind of stuff. And by the way, I just pressed enter. So whenever you press enter without like typing anything, it will use the default value, right? So in this case, if I wanted to for example, for the release channel, if I want to use this one, I can copy and paste it and click enter, right? But I want to use the edge channel, right? So I will just press enter, right? Now it asks me for the username and the password, so let me type them real, real quick. All right. So now let me explain each of these questions so you better understand what is going on. So work path is asking for like the directory or the folder that it should use to download and install uh, and use for like the compilation and building of your image, right? And in this case, I have made a directory called pmOS in my downloads folder and I'm using it, right? Now it asks you about the release channel. So what is a release channel? Basically, uh, every like certain amount of time, uh, like some changes and some updates are made and they need to be tested, right? So this channel right here, which is 24.12, is the latest release channel and it's recommended for the best stability. What does this mean? This means that all of the changes and like the updates that were added to this channel right here are tested enough and are like mature enough to be stable enough to use, right? This channel right here is older than this one, so it's an old release that is unsupported. However, you might need it because, for example, a certain update breaks some things that you relied on previously, right? And finally, the edge channel, which is the one that we are using, this edge channel right here has the most up-to-date and like the most updates and the most changes. And these updates and the changes like are not always tested enough, so they might break something. Uh, so that's the edge channel. So how would you know which channel to use, right? So it tells you right here, unless your device is in the community or main category of devices, right? You need to choose Edge. Otherwise, you need to consider using the latest release, all right? So if your device is listed in like the community wiki or something like this, uh, you can use like one of the other channels, like this one right here. However, I like to use Edge because there is a high chance that it includes some of the fixes that you probably will need in your image, right? But you should try, like, you should try this one and you should try this one and see which one works better for you. And actually, in this video, I'm going to show you how we can test multiple images, right? Because this is an important part too. All right. So now that we have covered this part right here, which is about the release channel, it asked me about the password because it needed to like do some uh, stuff as root or it needed some privilege. And after I gave it the password, it now asks me for like the device vendor, right? So what is the manufacturer or the company that made my device? And in this case, I have a Samsung A51 mobile phone, so I will use Samsung, right? So now it asks me about the code name of the device. So which Samsung device do I have? I have the A51, right? So I will basically type A51. Great. Now it asks me about the username. So why is this? It's not explained here, but the username that you will define right here will be the username or the user that will be available in the final image, right? So after we install Linux on this device, there will be a user called Ahmed ready to use and to log in into, right? So in this case, I will say the username is Ahmed, and now it asks me which uh, Wi-Fi backend do I want to use. There are two backends. There is the WPA supplicant and there is the IWD. I am going to use the default, right? Unless you have uh, a reason to use this one, you should use the default. And this is pretty much the case with most of the questions right here. You should use the default unless you have a reason to change it, right? So I'm going to press enter to use the default, which is the WPA supplicant, right? Great. Now it asks me about the user interface. So it tells me that these are the available user interfaces, and they are 21 user interfaces, right? So there is none, which means it will install a Linux kernel and a Linux operating system with no graphical or console interfaces, right? So you cannot interact with it, all right? So if you want this, you should choose none. However, if you want like a basic console, all right, you can use this one, which is called console, and this would give you a console environment like a terminal, but with no graphical or touch UI, which means that you would need like a USB dongle and a keyboard to connect it to the mobile phone in order to like type the commands and use it, right? If you need a graphical user interface, you can use the frame buffer keyboard, right? Which is like a plain frame buffer console with a touchscreen keyboard support. What does this mean? Frame buffer, you can think of it as the most basic uh, graphical UI or user interface. It's something that is kind of guaranteed to work on your device if your device can't run any of the other user interfaces, right? So you can use this one if you need like a basic console environment with a keyboard that supports like touch screens and touch UIs. There is also the frame buffer phone, which is like the same as a frame buffer keyboard, but it's not just a keyboard, it's a UI that can also allow you to like open a menu and do this kind of stuff. And now we have like some other interesting choices like GNOME and GNOME Mobile. So what are these? If you don't know what GNOME is, GNOME, or if you don't know like what a user interface is, what you are seeing on my screen right here, this is a user interface. It's the thing that lets you interact with the operating system, open windows, move windows, like search, for example, these kind of stuff. And what you are seeing right here is a GNOME user interface. So this is a GNOME user interface, right? So if I choose GNOME right here, I should have something quite similar to what I just showed you. However, it might also be like not the recent GNOME version, might be slightly outdated. And the GNOME mobile right here is the same thing as the GNOME one, except that it had some patches to better adapt for phones, right? And it's experimental, right? So these are interesting options. However, these options might not be well supported in your device. All right. So you might face some issues. And in my case, I actually faced some issues. I never managed to get these options running from like uh, like the first couple tries. I will try to debug it and further understand what is the issue. But for now, let's like move into another option that might work well with our device, right? So Wayland, you can see like between the brackets there is like either Wayland or X11, right, or frame buffer, right? So we have like these three options. So what are these options? Basically, they are like a display manager slash protocols and these kind of like software, right? So these are required to provide like softwares, applications, and the operating system a way to handle like the display and the like the windows and the displaying of applications and windows and how you would interact with them. So these are like provided using these projects, which is Wayland and X11. Frame buffer is like a very, very simple version of such projects, right? So Wayland is usually harder uh, to get it working. So because GNOME and GNOME Mobile uses Wayland, that's why I faced some changes. And I suspect that if I used one of these, I might also face the same challenges. However, X11 is quite well supported and is kind of like lighter and less complex than, or actually, the less complex part is false. X11 is quite complex, and that's why they even started with it. But it's less complex when it comes to like supporting it on other devices. Okay. But anyway, we are going to try an X11 user interface because there is a high chance that this would work out of the box directly, right? And the best like user interface to use, in my opinion, uh, for like a first installation is the one that you see here. So this photo already uses XFCE4, and this photo means that this user interface already works, right? So we don't need to like waste some time trying to understand what is going on and why is it my image is not working. We can start with something that we know should work, and after that we can move into other stuff that and like debug it and understand if it will work or if it needs like some fixes and these kind of stuff, right? So if you look here, we have XFCE4 at the bottom, right? And it uses X11 and it's a lightweight desktop, right? And between brackets, it tells you style is recommended. I will tell you why. So basically, this is the user interface that we are going to use because we know it should work, right? And this user interface is not mobile friendly, which means the icons and the text is going to be like slightly small on a phone screen, right? Because this is meant for desktops, right? So that's why it tells you a stylus is recommended because you might have some trouble trying to like click on things, but I will show you a couple of tricks that should make your life easier using XFCE4 on a mobile screen, right? All right. So so this is why it tells you a stylus is recommended, but in other like user interfaces, you might see it. You might see between the brackets. Let me see. Alright, you might see keyboard required. So for example, with i3WM, it tells you that you would need a keyboard. What does this mean? I believe this means that you would need a physical keyboard. You would need to connect it to the phone in order to easily use this user interface right there. And this makes sense because this is a tiling window manager. If you don't know what this is, basically, this means that you are going to have a lot of keyboard shortcuts that you can use to move the windows around and interact with like your windows and your applications, right? So that's why a keyboard is required. It's not meant, tiling window manager are not meant to be used with like drag and drop and a mouse and these kind of stuff, right? So you should like pay attention to the things in the brackets. Also, experimental means that like you might face some issues with it. But anyway, I'm going to choose XFCE4, right? So I'm going to copy it and paste it and click enter, right? Now, based on your UI selection, which is this one right here, the default will not install systemd. So what is a systemd? Systemd is like an init system or It's the system that is going to initialize all of the processes and all of like uh, like the firmware and packages and tools and things that your kernel and your software and your user interface needs, right? So basically, for GNOME and GNOME Mobile, they require systemd, right? They cannot work without systemd properly. You can get it working, but it's not like well supported, right? However, for XFCE4, you don't need actually systemd. You can use other init systems uh, like I believe the one that is used by default is, I actually forgot its name. All right, I forgot its name, but there is like a default one which can be used with most of these UIs, so you don't always need to use systemd. So it asks you, should like the tool install systemd or not? So the default depends on the user interface. In our case, XFCE4 doesn't require systemd, so the default is not installing systemd. And that's what we want to do. However, if for any reason you need systemd, you can actually like say always install systemd, right? And it would install it and make XFCE4 use it, right? So we don't need systemd because this user interface doesn't require it. So I am just going to say use the default, which is not installing systemd. All right, additional options. Do you need to modify these options? So for example, extra free space, boot partition size, parallel jobs, and these kind of options. I'm going to say no, I don't want to modify any of the optional or extra options. Right? So I pressed enter, which means it will use the default value, which is no. Additional packages that will be installed to root FS. Specify them with a comma separated. So what does this mean? Basically, you are going to get an image for a Linux operating system that's kind of bare bones. It doesn't have like necessary tools and uh, packages, right? So you can tell the bootstrap command to install specific commands and have it available uh, right with the installation image. All right. So for example, if I said vim, comma, fetch, this means that these two tools right here will be installed and available with the installation uh, image, right? So this might be important or interesting if you want to like uh, have have a certain programs and have a certain packages like already installed with the image, maybe for debugging or for other purposes. So you can define them with a comma separated string, right? Now it asks for the time zone, right? So in my case, yes, I'm in Africa/Cairo, so I would simply say yes. And now it asks for the local or the language that it should use, right? So you can use English, the United States version of English, or you can like define whatever language you should use, but it should be UTF-8, right? So for example, I believe Arabic EG might not work because it's not a UTF-8 or it's not supported in the UTF-8, right? So you should use a language that is supported in this text format, right? So English US is our choice. Device host name, right? So basically this is asking what you want to call the device, right? So when it appears on like Wi-Fi networks and these kind of operations, you can like identify it, right? So I'm going to call it Samsung S51. Makes sense. Would you like to copy these public keys to the device? This is actually an interesting part. So if you don't know what is this, basically there is something called SSH, and it lets you connect it to other devices wirelessly. And one way, or like to secure the connection, you can use a password or you can use something called SSH keys, right? So what would this do? This would copy your SSH keys into the Linux image that we are going to install on our device. So once the installation is complete and you like boot it into the Linux operating system, you can directly SSH into it, right? So you can type SSH and the username, which is in this case Ahmed, at the IP, the device, or the IP of the device, and it would allow you to connect it to the device wirelessly, which might come in handy if you need to like debug some things and this kind of stuff, right? So do I want to copy my public SSH keys to the device? Yes, I do. Now, this question right here asks you whether you want to build outdated packages using the pmbootstrap install. I honestly don't know what would happen if I said no. I will simply follow the default. So the default was yes, so I will press yes. And the final question, which you probably wouldn't see if this is the first time you ran the pmbootstrap init command, right? So what does this question mean? This is basically that existing stage root means, do you want me to delete any configuration or installed like packages and firmwares from previous operations? So I have already used the tool before, so it downloaded and it made some like binaries and some packages. So it's asking me, do you want to delete it? I should say yes, because you shouldn't like do multiple images using the same ch root unless you know that they won't like interfere or cause any issues, right? So I will zap them. Zap means delete them, all right? So it asks for the password. All right, done. And this step right here, which was the pm bootstrap init, which is done, right? So this step right here configures or generates our configuration for the image. We didn't generate the image, we didn't install anything, we just made our configuration, right? So now the tool, or right, right. So the bootstrap, right? Now it knows all the details it needs about our device and about what we need in our Linux image, so it can like install them and generate the necessary files for the installation process, right? So far so good, all right. Actually, we now have followed all of these steps till this one right here, which tells you about how you should install postmarketOS, right? So it tells you, depending on your device, the installation instruction may be quite different, and this is correct. Each device will have a different installation instructions. So as you saw earlier in the video, we have already read like the installation instructions, and there are some like important notes that we should follow in order to get the installation to work, right? So that's what it's telling you here. So let's return to our device wiki page and follow these instructions, right? So here is the thing. It tells you to use install from recovery mode, right? So there are different ways to install postmarketOS, right? you can install it on an SD card. What does this mean? This means that it's going to put the actual Linux operating system on the SD card, so you can use your phone to boot from the SD card directly. So why is this interesting? Because some devices, like this one right here, supports this. So you can boot directly from an SD card, and you might find this useful to like try different images and different configurations, right? Before you like choose the final configurations that you are going to install on the device itself. So this is one way to install postmarketOS, although this is not what we want to do. Another like point regarding the installation, which is full disk encryption. All right. So nowadays, lots of like devices support something called full disk encryption. So what does this mean? If you like want to have a secure phone that uh, like that can't like be like people can't like if someone had access to your phone, he can't read your files and this kind of stuff unless he can like log in, right? So this is what I believe is full disk encryption, and it's supported in both postmarketOS. So if your phone supports full disk encryption, you can add this part right here to the install command, and it would generate an image that supports full disk encryption, right? So how would you know if your phone supports full disk encryption? Um, there were like a page, yes, this page right here. So I believe my phone is Samsung Galaxy A51, and what I believe by this table right here is that all of the Samsung A5 series or A5 line, so A51, A52, A53, I believe that's what's meant by this table or this entry right here. So in this case, if we like scroll horizontally, we will find full disk encryption right here. So Samsung A5 does support full disk encryption, right? So great. So we can add this uh, argument to our install command to utilize full disk encryption. Another way to install postmarketOS is through an Android recovery zip. All right. And if you have ever tried to like install custom ROMs on your mobile phone, there is a high chance that you have done this before. So what this is, basically, I can like give you a zip file, right, which you can download and put it on an SD card, and you can use something called recovery, right, Android recovery. And the recovery would take the zip file that is on the SD card and run it, or run the code inside of it to install the ROM or the custom ROM or the custom operating system on the device, right? So Android phones have something called recovery, which is like a tiny operating or like a very, very basic operating system. It's not even like an operating system. It's just like a software, a very basic software that lets you recover your phone if anything happened to your operating system. And it can be used to install other operating systems as well, right? And this method right here is exactly what we are going to use. And this is like in the device page, it tells you to do this, right? So it tells you use installation from recovery mode, which is this one right here. It even has the same link, right? There is another way, which is the pmbootstrap flasher. So we are not going to use this one right here, but if your device page says that you can use it, feel free to use it, all right? And there are like a lot of other ways and other stuff to configure and use, but we have reached like the methods that we want, so let's jump into it, right? So I am going to open this link right here. Install from recovery mode. So as you can see, it explains the same thing that I have just said. And for preparation, you need to install pmbootstrap, and we have already done this step. We have installed it, and we have also initialized it, right? Now we need to have a recovery system like TWRP installed on our phone. What does this mean? So basically, I'm not going to cover this step in this video because the video is already quite long and this step is going to make it quite longer. But if you like, uh, uh, right, so if you like search for in YouTube for TWRP or install TWRP on Samsung A51. So if you like search something like this, you would find a ton of videos explaining how you can install TWRP on your device, right? So you can do this step easily by following any of the tutorials. And once you have done this step, you should be prepared to do installation from recovery. Alright, so what do we need to install from recovery? As I explained earlier, we need a zip file, right? A zip file that contains some code and the installation files that the recovery should utilize or run in order to install our operating system, right? So we need to create or generate a recovery zip image, right? And how can we do this? It's very easy. Just follow the pmbootstrap article to build your own image, right? So this was the article that we were actually following, which contains the init thing. And we stopped right here, right? So we will follow the article starting from here, except that we are going to add this argument right here to our install command, right? So after we have done pm bootstrap init, we are going to do pm bootstrap install, and this is exactly the part uh, that we should do, right? So it tells you, depending on your device, follow certain instructions, and all device ports having comments that they run some sort of some form of pm bootstrap install command at one point. This command will like build ch roots and install all necessary packages and all necessary stuff that is going to be used uh, in your like Linux installation, right? And it explains other stuff. You can use the help message or the help argument to see some details about the install command, and it also tells you about the full disk encryption thing. All right. So in our case, we need to do pm bootstrap install so that pm bootstrap would utilize the configuration that we have defined in our initialization to install all required packages and firmware and patches. And we are also going to add this argument to tell it to create a recovery zip image, right? And we will also need to do this thing right here. Remember that in our device page, there is this note right here which tells you to add this argument to your install command, right? So here is what we want to do. We want to say pm bootstrap install, right? And we need to provide this argument right here. Recovery install partition is data. And we also need to provide this argument right here, which says create an Android recovery zip, right? And finally, we can provide this argument right here, which enables full disk encryption. So now that we have defined all necessary arguments for our install command, the install command is going to use the configuration and these arguments to build and install the necessary packages and prepare our recovery zip image that we can use to install this the Linux operating system on our device, right? Amazing. So let's run it. So if I run it, uh, all right. So first of all, it asks me about my password, but before it asking me about my password, it told me about a warning, which is that I shouldn't use, or not shouldn't, but it's really recommended to use FDE with Android Recovery Zip. So this might actually cause some issues for us, but let's try it. Let's see if it will work or not, right? And it also tells you that the kernel or the kernel of recovery system, for example, the TWRP, must support cryptosystem or this thing right here in order to do the FDE thing, right? So actually, let me like do a little disclaimer. When I tested this and when I was playing with different images, I never actually used FDE, so I'm not sure what exactly will we uh, find. However, let's try it. Let's try it, and if it fails, we can simply run the same command again without the FDE argument, and it will generate another uh, like another recovery zip image that shouldn't have this issue, right? So we need to provide a password. So let me type the password. And while this command is running, let me open another terminal right here. So let me open another terminal right here. And in this case, let me like resize that. All right. So let me run this command, which is pmbootstrap. I believe it was logs. All right. No, it was a log. Yes, just one. Alright, so once you run this command right here, it's going to display the logs for whatever operation you are doing with pm bootstrap, right? And this will be very useful so you like understand what's going on, and if for example like one of the steps like took some time or you believed it like hanged up something, you can see in the logs what is going on and check if everything is working normally or if it's just taking a long time. So now that we have the logs open on the right, let's continue our installation process. So when I ran the install command, it started with preparing native C shoot, right? So it made this step right here, and then it began like the next step, which is create device rootofs. So what is rootofs? Rootofs is root file system. Okay, this means that basically what is happening here is uh, that it's basically installing the system and preparing the system that is going to run on our device, right? So while it was doing this, there are two warnings, right? So here it about to install blah 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 local PM. All right. So basically, you can ignore these warnings if they appeared, or you can simply solve them with this one right here. But I believe this has or this is related to like versions and these kinds of stuff. So there is an updated version um, of this package than the one I have, probably something like this. But you can simply ignore this warning um, and move on. All right. Now it started installing the following packages. So it started installing the base image, like patches and specific firmware related to my device, and the XFCE fork of the postmarketOS prepared and other important packages. And as you can see here, Vim and NeoFetch are listed in the list of packages to be installed. Why? Because if you remember, in the configuration, it asked me about it asked me somewhere about if I want to install other packages, and I said yes, install Vim and NeoFetch, right? So as you can see, it's working correctly, and it's installing other necessary and required stuff, right? So made this and this step, and finally it stopped at this step right here. So now it requires me to type in the password. This password is not the password of my computer. This is not like the sudo password. It doesn't need this password for any sudo thing. It needs this password for the username Ahmed that will be created on the image that will be installed on this device, right? So basically, after everything is done, and when we want to use this device with the Linux system on it, we need to log in, right? So in this case, our username will be Ahmed and our password will be the one that I am defining right now, right? So in this case, I will define a password. Now it asks me to retype the new password just to make sure that I wrote it correctly. All right, great. So password updated successfully. Now it asks me for the sudo password to do some operations that require sudo privileges, right? So I'm going to write the password for my computer. All right. There is a note that no valid keymap. You can ignore this note. And now, as you can see, it's creating recovery flashable zip. So this is the step where we should expect to have a zip file that we can just copy it to an SD card and use a recovery system to flash it. So I'm waiting for it to continue. And by the way, this last step right here, which create recovery zip, this takes some time, right? So we should wait for it. I will actually pause the video, and once it's done, I will come back. All right, so I'm back, and as you can see, it has finished creating the recovery flashable zip, and it displays this message which tells you how to flash this recovery zip, and it tells you to visit this link right here, which I just opened. And if you actually look, this link right here opens the same page to the one we had right here. So it's basically the same page. So if we continue looking onto this page, we have already done this step. This is another way, or this is one way to flash the zip files that were generated. However, this is called ADB sideload. And if you remember, or if you recall, it tells you that particularly for this device, ADB sideloading through TWRP may cause installation process to hang. So you don't want to do this. You want to install postmarketOS with TWRP's install GUI button, right? So this means that we can't do this part right here. So this is also related to the side load. So we can do this part right here, and it tells you here that if you don't want it to side load, you can copy the generated zip file to an SD card. And here is something quite weird and confusing with the docs, which is that this thing right here is a link, right? You can click it, but it will not do anything because this link is supposed to take you to a section in this web page that we are on right now that explains how we can like copy the generated image to an SD card, right? So this link should take you to this section. However, after the side load section, there are no other sections. This made me like I deduced that there were a section that was removed and they didn't update the link. So if you actually click on view history, you can like jump to a version like this one right here. And if you like go down, you will find another section after the one about the side load. This section is exactly what we were looking for, which is copy the generated image to an SD card. So I'm not sure why they removed it. However, it's pretty self-explanatory, so maybe that's why they removed it. But anyway, instead of side loading, you can run this command right here. All right. So that's what we are going to do right now. Let me also open the logs. So as you can see, this command export will like copy and or like will prepare all of the necessary or required files in a directory, so you can like simply go there, take the files that you want without having to like dive deeper into all of like the directories that was created just to make the image, right? So the command has run successfully, and as you can see, it tells you that it has exported the following some links to this directory /temp/postmarketOS-export, right? And what are these symlinks? If you don't know what a symlink is, it's a symbolic link, which means it's a shortcut, basically, right? So if you actually do something like this, ls-la and do it on this directory, you will find right here. Let me like increase the size. I'm not sure why are they like color coded this way. This is weird. This hasn't done. I haven't seen this before, but anyway, you will see that each of these files in this directory maps to a file in the working directory of postmarketOS, right? So basically, here is the boot image located right here, the DTPO image located right here, initramff located right here, and the zip file that we want, this is the zip file that we will use, right, to install postmarketOS using the recovery, is located right here, right? And there are other files also. So you can use this zip file directly with the recovery, or you can actually do the steps manually by actually flashing the boot image into the boot partition on your phone, and then flashing the root image into the root partition or the data partition, and these kind of steps, right? However, we will use this because it will make our lives a lot easier, right? So how are we going to do this? Simply, we need to copy this file right here, which is DMOS, which we need to copy the zip file into somewhere where we can like work with it, right? So in this case, I will do downloads, right? So so just like this, if I move to the downloads, I will see this file right here, all right? So this is the recovery flashable image, all right? Now, with that being done, we have pretty much done all the steps required by like the postmarketOS. The next steps are like basic ROM, like custom ROM installation or flashing custom ROMs. It's basically the same process, right? So here is what we want to do. I have the phone right here, and I have like this SIM card ejector or something like this, which I can use to open the SIM card slot which also contains our SD card, right? So I have this right here is the SD card. I'm going to put the phone into the recovery. So I'm going on Samsung A51. You can do this by holding the volume down and the power button at the same time, and once it boots up, you should move your finger to the volume up button. All right. So again, I'm going to hold the volume down and the power button, and once the logo, the Samsung logo appears, I will put my finger on the volume up instead. All right. And just like this, I'm now into the TWRP recovery. And by the way, I'm not going to continue the video like this. I'm going to film the process on my phone, and I'm going to insert it on the video itself. All right. But anyway, before we do this, I have the SD card right here, which I'm going to plug to my computer. All right. So we should see. What are these? Oh, all right. So these are the CH roots. So you can ignore them, but we should see the SD card right here. All right. And as you can see, I've already added like a couple of different images on it. We can simply ignore all of this. All I want is to take this zip file right here, which we just copied from the postmarketOS export to the downloads, right? So I want to copy this file right here into the SD card. So let me copy it. And by the way, if you are annoyed by all of these mounted CH roots, you can run this command right here, shut down, give it the sudo password. As you can see, it's unmounting all of this stuff. So now, all right. So now it's much more cleaner. All right. So it's still copying my file. So let's wait for it to finish. It should finish any. All right, it finished. Now you want to eject or unmount the SD card before removing it from your computer. So let me do this. Now it can be safely unplugged. So let me unplug it. All right. So here is the SD card. I'm going to insert it back into my phone. All right. So right here, I inserted it back. Now we don't know, we don't need to do anything else with the computer. All right. Except one thing, which is that this cable right here, I'm not sure if, I believe you can see it, and it's not tall enough to be in the frame, but on Samsung phones, in order to enter the recovery, you have to have a USB-C cable connected to your computer and your phone. You cannot enter your recovery without having a USB cable connected. This is to prevent ordinary people from entering the recovery by mistake. All right. So now what I'm going to do is film the rest of the process on my phone. All right. And I will insert it on the video. So let me do this. All right. So as you can see, this is the TWRP recovery, and I need to swipe to unlock. So the first thing that we need to do is that we want to wipe, if you go to advanced wipe, we want to wipe
the delve cache and the data and the cache, alright? But if you actually try to do this, it will error out on my phone. Why? Because data is not mounted, and for some reason I cannot mount it unless I format it, right? So I need, or let me do it slowly so you can follow. So you go to wipe, then you go to format data, then you type yes to confirm that you want to format the data. And by the way, this is going to like delete all your files and all your installed programs and everything, so make sure you back up everything before you do such a step. Alright, then you click enter. Right, a bunch of errors appeared, but it should succeed at the end. Once it has like succeeded, you need to reboot into recovery. So how I do this? We use the reboot button right here, and then you choose recovery. So this is going to close the phone and reboot it back into the recovery. Right, let me press the power button. Alright, we are back at the recovery. If you visit the mount page, you will find out that data is now mounted. You can mount it and unmount it. Alright, also cache is mounted, right? So now we can go to wipe, advanced wipe. We can choose the delve cache and the data and the cache, and we can wipe them, right? Now that they are wiped, we can here is an important step that you should always do, otherwise you will get an error. So for example, we can like go ahead and install the zip file that I copied to the SD card, but if you do this, you will get an error. Why? Because the data is mounted and the cache is mounted. So you need to unmount these two before installing the system, alright? So now that they are unmounted, you can simply come here, click select storage and choose the SD card, alright? Now we want to choose the zip file that we copied. So this is the one that we copied into our SD card, right? And you simply swipe. Alright, this is the logo of postmarketOS, which is a nice thing. And as you can see, a lot of steps are being done. So because it didn't error out, this means that these steps succeeded, right? So a lot of steps are succeeding. Alright, as you can see, it's installing the root of S, which is the actual system files. Alright, so now it like tells me about this thing right here, which is I believe related to the full disk encryption. So it tells you that don't forget to set a password for the partition, and you can do this by running that command right here from a terminal, right? And then it errored out at the end. So this error at the end, alright, because I haven't like tried the FDE or full disk encryption before, I was quite like surprised with the note that appeared to set like the password for the partition. So that's why I had to like look some things up. However, if you like look at the video at the installation process, you would find that under the zip file, or in this blue bar right here, it had the word successful at the end. So it means that the installation was successful, alright? So the error that you saw with the data partition, I believe this has nothing to do with the installation process itself, and you can basically ignore it, right? and I have ignored it before and everything worked perfectly, so I believe there is no need to like worry about it. Alright, so now the note said something about running a command in the terminal. So how do we open a terminal? You simply go to advanced, then terminal. Alright, and the command was pmos something like set password, which is this one. So I pressed tab and it auto completed. Right, if you press on enter, it's going to ask you for a passphrase. Alright, so I will write AS. Alright, verify passphrase, which is AS. Right, it's doing its thing. Hopefully it succeeds, because as I said, I haven't done the full disk encryption before. Alright, it succeeded. So if you don't see an error, it means it has probably succeeded. Alright, great. Now that we have the installation process succeeded and that we have ran like the set password thing in the terminal, we can simply click reboot into system. Alright, alright, you saw the little penguins. This means that we are booting into a Linux kernel, and as you can see, this window right here I believe is related to the full disk encryption. So no one can decrypt the disk unless he knows the password, which is in this case AS, and you have to like enter it in a terminal or in a window like this in order to like log in into the, or not log in, but to like encrypt the disk and boot into the system, right? So if you don't want to like do this step, just exclude the FDE argument from the install command. Alright, so let's see. Right, so there were a blinking kernel right here, and it successfully booted into XFCE 4. Alright, so as you can see, on the terminal, while we were choosing the user interface, it told you that a stylus is recommended, right? Because of this, everything is quite small. However, we can like overcome this issue. So as you can see right here, like there are a couple of information, and here is the login screen, and here is a little keyboard that we can use to log in. So I am going to type the password that I used, or the password that I defined in the configuration or the installation process, right? So I'm typing it right now. And I'm going to press on this enter right here, and it should boot into the actual environment. Usually it's like it takes like probably because this is the first time we are doing it, it takes some time, but usually it's quite faster than this. And maybe I'm not sure, but maybe the full disk encryption also might have like an overhead or something. But as you can see, we are into an actual Linux system with an actual desktop environment, and this thing right here that you are seeing is not meant for mobile phones. That's why it's hard to use on a mobile phone. But this also means that you can use programs that you use on your desktop on the phone, right? This unlocks a lot of possibilities. You can use it as a Raspberry Pi, for example, like a mini PC or something. So it's pretty interesting. Let me show you a couple of tricks. So the first thing, if you like, there is like an app dock at the bottom. You can click on the second icon from the right, which is this one. This should bring like the applications folder, right? So you can run an application from here, right? I'm going to choose appearance and click on this launch button right here. So if I can click on it, alright, so it opened. Now we want to change a couple of settings to make it like using this system easier. Alright, so the first thing is the window scaling. Alright, so in settings, in appearance settings, there is this thing called window scaling. Alright, as you can see, I cannot like choose 2x. The drop down menu is behaving weirdly. I have found this to be an annoying issue, but if you like press anywhere else and then click on the drop down menu, you can select 2x. And as you can see, it made everything a lot bigger, which is a lot better. Now in the fonts, you can come here and click custom DPI, right? And then write like a big number. For example, I'm going to write 120, right? And click enter on the keyboard, and as you can see, the font is now much larger. Now it's a lot better and a lot more usable. Like you can click on the icons, open stuff. Alright, so maybe we can come here and say Wi-Fi. Alright, it's not listed here, but we can say settings manager. As you can see, any window that is like a rectangle, you probably will have a hard time using it with this scaling, but you can double click on the window top bar and it will take a full screen, which would make it easier. Alright, now we need to find the setting for the Wi-Fi. Where was it? So I was not sure what exactly happened that prevented me from like clicking on the Wi-Fi interface, but I managed to fix it, and here is how I did it. So in the application finder, you can find the panel, right? So you can customize it. So double click on it and it will give you some preferences. So in the items, there is this status tray plugin that was glitching for some reason. I removed it, right? Then I press add, and then like I scroll down and I choose it again. So I add it again. Great. Now it has been added, but it's like at the top right, and we need to like move it to somewhere else where we can click on it. So I'm going to select it and use these buttons to move it in the like move its order. Alright, and now it's right here. So now if I click on it, I can click on available networks. I can choose my network. I can type my password. So let me type it real quick. It's a long password. And I can click on connect. It's loading. Alright, perhaps I typed it wrong. So let me like show the password, but I don't like show it on video, so I'll get back to you after I like connect. Alright, yes, after I saw the password, there were indeed I typed it wrong because the keyboard is quite small. So now if I click connect, it should connect successfully. Great, amazing. I believe if I go to the terminal and do a ping, it would work. Amazing. So I show you how you can like connect to a network. I show you how you can like make the icons and the window scaling bigger, so you can easily interact with the device. One more thing, if we come here, there is the onboard keyboard settings. Let's open it. Right. Here you can find a lot of settings about the keyboard. I like to use this interface right here. And if we open something, we should get a nicer keyboard that looks like a phone keyboard. Alright. So that was it. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you managed to also install Linux on your devices. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I will try to answer them as I can.